right? So Democrats came into this year with a big lead in the generic ballot, historic trends on their side, and a generally unpopular president. Some of those things are eroding. Republicans should be careful to celebrate, because if you look at what happened in Georgia, the numbers for Democratic voters in that primary, that gubernatorial primary, were up. We've seen this in Wisconsin. Scott Walker is warning about it. So Republicans need to take it seriously and not jump on a celebration too early. It's only May.
Well, Angela, complacency doesn't get you anywhere. I think Hillary Clinton showed us all that, right, by not going to Pennsylvania. You can't be complacent, because otherwise, you know, you really do run the risk that the Democrats are able to pull a rabbit out of the hat.
Exactly. Complacency would certainly be a mistake for either party. And I think what you're seeing now with the reaction to Democrats, look at Chance the Rapper, who came out and said, hey, you know, Democrats have been taking our votes for granted. More and more people are beginning to realize that. And when you see Democrats as the party that's very concerned about not hurting MS-13's feelings, that group is going to be real small. That's going to be a lonely group. Now, Republicans need to be careful, because this time around, they don't have Hillary Clinton to run against. You know, her illegal behavior and her corruption brought a lot of people to the polls. They don't have that this time. So
I don't even know if it was that as much as it was just her personality itself. She was not a good candidate. And then you layer all that other stuff on top of it. And people weren't motivated. And motivation, right, to actually get people out there is a little tricky. I will give you this, Jessica. When people are feeling kind of good about stuff and everything's okay, everything's hunky-dory, maybe they're not as motivated, right? Maybe the Republicans, maybe there's some risk there that people are like, okay, things are pretty good. I'm liking my life as it is. And they're not feeling quite the drive to get to the polls.
Well, that's what happens generally in midterm elections. We're not in a presidential year where everyone is super hyped up about everything here. That's why I think actually a lot of Republicans have been going out there, like Ted Cruz, for instance, and saying Democrats are going to impeach President Trump if they take control. And that's why you need to get to the polls in order to protect this president and to protect Republican control. So that's a motivating factor that they're using there. Complacency, certainly not the answer for both sides. Nothing taken for granted. And it'll be interesting because there are trend lines that are benefiting both sides here. But again, I would say if you look at what's going on right now, I completely agree with what Emily was saying in terms of Republicans, that you can't just sit on your laurels here. If people are saying, oh, the economy's looking good, and that may be due to Republicans, Dems are fired up. The resistance is strong, and it's not all about identity politics, and it's certainly not about Hillary Clinton's illegal behavior.
It's not identity politics anymore. I think actually, dare I say, it's not even so partisan as much as it is in Washington. Americans want what is best for them. Political party be damned. They want the policy that's going to secure our economy and secure our nation. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. So good to see you guys. Hey, happy Memorial Day to all of you. All right. Sick of what they call DOJ stonewalling, House conservatives are demanding a second special counsel to investigate the investigators. It's going to take time. It's investigating the investigators. A group of House GOP lawmakers are calling for a second special counsel to probe alleged misconduct at the FBI and the Department of Justice. New York Republican Congresswoman Claudia Tenney is one of those members who's calling for this. She joins me right now. Good to have you here, Congresswoman. Happy Memorial Day.
Thank you. Thank you to you, too, as well. Thank you to our veterans and people who gave the ultimate sacrifice
for sure.
For our freedom,
Absolutely.
for sure.
Absolutely. We have what we have today because of them. But let me ask you, because part of what we have is historically trust in our institutions. And that's been eroded. And there's a lot of fear right now that we have people that are in high places in government that want to basically get in the way of the will of the American voter and the American people. And there's concern that Robert Mueller and his team, for whatever reason, they're looking into everything they possibly can look into in terms of potential collusion, the Trump campaign in Russia. And yet this one thing that seems to be kind of glaring out at everyone, the elephant in the room, is why on earth was the FBI so willing to use a phony dossier that had been funded by the president's opponents as a reason to go out and get a FISA warrant, or God forbid, actually put some kind of, dare I say, spy inside the Trump campaign.
Yeah, where did this begin? And I think that's why we're supporting a resolution for a second special counsel. You can't expect this agency, the FBI or the DOJ, to investigate themselves, and that's why we're looking into it. There's a lot of I signed on to a letter earlier in the year where we really spelled out. It was originally co-sponsored with Ron DeSantis and Congressman Ron DeSantis from Florida, and in that we actually spelled out specific facts that we know were undisputed. And those facts and what we thought were potentially violations of federal statutes. And we set forth the facts, undisputed facts, and followed that up with the sections of law, made it very easy for them to look into themselves. But you know they're not going to look into their own investigation, which is why, unfortunately, we have to have a second special counsel. We have, an Inspector General's report that's coming out soon, but the Inspector General doesn't have the power to do the same type of investigation we're looking at. We want to know, when did this whole Hillary Clinton email scandal end? When did the Donald Trump collusion and Russia probes start, and why? And why was there, it appears to be, an informant hired by our own government to use a dossier that was created as a opposition research tool, brought to a FISA court, but yet not disclosed that this was actually provided by a political operative and paid for by a political operative? And that was among the first things that we called for in our letter with Congressman DeSantis was, this is a violation of federal election law, and that's just one element of it. But I mean, is this what we have one? Yeah, trust me, I'm an attorney. I'm a law and order person. I believe in equal justice under the law, but we should, we have professionals in office who I think are equally as upset and offended, not just the American people, but people who are serving in these positions who are saying, hey, we don't like what's going on at the top here. We are unbiased. We don't care about political parties. We just want the rule of law to be observed and to be recognized here. We took an oath.
You mentioned your background as a lawyer. I'll tell you, my background as a journalist.
Yeah.
If a source tells me something, right? First of all, I quadruple check the thing.
Absolutely.
But I also try and think about what motivates that source. And to me, this is kind of sort of basic, right? Like there should be some FBI 101 class for James Comey, because he should have cared who funded that document.
I agree, and I'm actually in the same boat as you are. I owned a newspaper. I was a newspaper publisher and an editor, and I went out and dug up stories and did investigative journalism, a lost art that appears to be disappearing in our journalism today. Why Why isn't the media jumping all over this and saying, wait, we don't care what political party somebody's in? Look, I, as a member of the state assembly when I was in New York, I called out both sides, and we had plenty of corruption. We had more corruption to go around than probably any other state in the country. And I called out Republicans and Democrats alike when there was corruption or something that was going wrong in government. And that was my instinct as a reporter. And when I was a reporter, I went after some of the biggest fish in the pond in my own local community who happened to be Republicans, and I'm a Republican. So I feel like that's, who we are as core citizens. We care about the rule of law, and it doesn't matter.
When he told our own Brett Baer that he didn't think it was relevant to tell the president who had paid for the dossier, and he didn't really particularly care who paid for the dossier. I thought, how could that be?
Yeah.
Because without knowing who paid for it, you can't possibly really understand whether the thing is real or not, and that makes you really question. And then you couple that with the call to the buddy at Columbia, who then leaks the story to the New York Times so he can get the special prosecutor. Especially, I mean, it just snowballs, and I really do question where we're heading and how much influence some of these people in big government have.
Yeah, and how about let's take it another step further. This evidence that was presented as credible evidence to a FISA court without disclosing to a court that this was political documents. That's just another level and another layer. And there's an awful lot here that really needs to be looked into. And I'm a conservative. I care about the taxpayer money. But look, Robert Mueller spent $46 million to indict 13 Russian nationals who we spent, a couple $1 million, and guess what we got? We can't get personal jurisdiction over these 13 people, and there's nothing coming of it, but the American public put out a lot of money on what looks to be, a wild goose chase when we have something right in front of us.
Well,
that
look,
we've spelled out basically
you keep
easily.
working on it because the
Yeah,
American people want answers. I, as a journalist, want answers, and at least hopefully that will help restore everyone's faith in the wonderful government we should have. Anyway, Congresswoman, thank you so much. It's good to see you. Happy Memorial Day.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, you want to keep burning our flag? Well, burn more of your cash. Will a new plan to get tough on Iran work?
Will be painful if the regime does not change its course from the unacceptable and unproductive path it has chosen to one that rejoins the League of Nations. These will indeed end up being the strongest sanctions in history when we are complete.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's message to Iran: put up or pay up when it comes to its nuclear program and a new deal. But will this tough talk actually work? Let's go to General Jerry Boykin. He joins me right now. General, good to see you. Happy Memorial Day, and thank you for all you've done. Does it work? I mean, can we put enough sanctions on Iran to actually get them to basically change their behavior?
First of all, I don't think that it's a matter of revamping the old plan. I think that it is starting over again and building something from scratch. Secondly, I think that these sanctions are hurting and will continue to hurt Iran in a very significant way. I mean, these are the toughest sanctions. Now, the Europeans are not going to play, at least not in the short term. But I also think that we need to recognize that many of the European corporations that have invested there are starting to rethink that and starting to back out.
Well, don't they have to? Don't they have to? I mean, if we're really committed to sanctions, and you have European companies, Total, the French energy company comes to mind, they do business in Iran. They also do business with us. I guarantee you we're more important. So if we're going to be true to what we have signed up for in terms of the sanctions, then don't we have to tell the likes of Total or any other European company that wants to do business over there, okay, good luck, you're not going to do any business with us?
No, I think that's exactly right, and I think that that's what they're worried about. That's why they're backing out now. They know that Mr. Trump has signaled that if you continue to do business with Iran, when we've put sanctions on them, we'll sanction you as well. I think that's a good move.
So let me ask you this, does that hurt us at all?
Well, I'm not an economist, but I'm sure there is some economic issue here. But in terms of our relationship with our allies, I think it's a short-term problem, but I don't think in the long run that it's going to be any kind of major problem for us, because I think the Europeans and others in the world are looking at Mr. Trump and saying, who is this guy? And then they're realizing that this guy is really a world leader.
Well, look, he certainly had some impact thus far, and there's a lot of potential good that can come of some of the policy decisions he's made thus far. But nonetheless, General, he's also kind of walking a tightrope, right? If you think about previous administrations, they've been just fine with the status quo, right? And they've kind of just gone along with, specifically Obama, President Obama, spending 8 years sort of apologizing for who we are rather than protecting our hegemonic leadership and power in the world. That seems to be changing. That seems to be shifting, and that could be wonderful. And he may go down in history as a tremendous leader and a tremendous president that really got us back on the right course. On the other hand, some worry that it could go very poorly.
Obviously, it could go poorly. I do not anticipate that. I think that the Europeans and other allies around the world, particularly in the Middle East, actually admire this guy's courage, because he has stepped out ahead of our allies in spite of their objections, and he has done what is in the best interest of America and also what's in the best interest of the world. They have to respect that.
I hear you. And I think there's an opportunity for lots of good to come of this. But what I'm fascinated by, and I think this is in part because of who he is and his background, He's taking chances that very, very, very few politicians have ever taken, and very few people in that presidential office have taken, and he's shaken things up. But that's what Americans wanted, a disruptor indeed.
That's right. And this, look, how's it worked in the past for those presidents that were too weak and too fearful to actually step out and take some risk? How's that worked for us? Look at the mess that we're in right now. The world, in fact, would be a better place if Trump had come along 30 years ago.
General, it's good to see you. Happy Memorial Day. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
What's the best way to honor our military heroes this Memorial Day? How about fixing the VA? How about that? After years of talk, is Washington...
America's News Headquarters, good afternoon. I'm Leland Vittert. Subtropical storm Alberto putting a real damper on this Memorial Day along the Gulf Coast. The storm smashing onto the Florida Panhandle and across the southeast with 65-mile-per-hour winds. People there bracing for storm surge, flash flooding, and possible tornadoes. Alberto is the first named storm of the 2018 Atlantic hurricane season, which doesn't officially start until Friday. A moving tradition at Arlington National Cemetery today, the final resting place for thousands of America's war dead. The president laying a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Similar ceremonies observed across our nation as we pause to honor the men and women who died and fought for our freedoms. I'm Leland Vittert. Now back to the Your World special.
You're that, you wait, and you wait a long time still. Is that true?
That is correct. As a matter of fact, The Hill did a report on this just in March that VA had been caught sending false reports about wait times. We know that veterans are still waiting on average longer for care. And this is something that the president talked about fixing when he was running for office.
VA whistleblower Scott Davis spoke exclusively to Neil, and Congress acted, passing a bill to give our veterans more access to health care outside the VA. Let's go right now to Virginia Republican Congressman and former Navy SEAL Scott Taylor. Good to have you here, Congressman.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So, are you happy?
Happy about what? happy about the bill that we passed?
Yeah. I mean, is this going to make it easier for veterans to get a different kind of care, better care?
Well, you know, I think it's important to say, I mean, I'm optimistic that it will. I think it's a good bill, but it's going to take, quite frankly, a lot of focus from the incumbent secretary and the VA itself to implement it. And it's also going to take oversight from Congress, folks like myself, to make sure that it actually happens. But absolutely, I mean, my own VA, my big hospital there, is a 1-star out of a 5-star in terms of wait times and callbacks. And that's the first thing a veteran sees, right? So we've got to get a handle on that. Some of this bill will deal with that. We also have to figure out a way to expedite hiring because there is a shortage, and you have to go through the bureaucracy of getting hired for that. But again, I go back to it's going to have rigorous oversight as well as determined focus to get it done, to get it implemented.
Representative, what do you say to those who are worried that this in some ways will take away from the VA hospitals themselves? I mean, if you have more choices, theoretically, the VA would try and be more competitive, maybe offer better care. Then again, maybe not.
Well, let me preface this by saying we need a whole culture change in customer service, right? We need to be customer service oriented inside the VA for veterans, right? Look, I know that there's a lot of politics that are going on where, on the left, they're like, okay, you privatizing the VA. And let me get it very clear what my position is. It is the duty and the responsibility of the government to care for our veterans when they come back. However, there should be more private options that are out there. There are parts of the country that need the private sector to be able to supplement the VA or compete in some areas. And there are some areas that, quite frankly, need the VA to help them in their private care. So I think more private options, more public-private partnerships is a good thing rather than a bad thing.
So how long is this going to take to really become effective in your view?
I know that Congress has, I think we had a year timeline, if I do remember, to get this thing implemented. But again, it's going to, as you are well aware, the VA is a very big bureaucracy. You could spend a career trying to fix it and all kinds of different things. So I'm not under any illusions that it's not going to be difficult, but we have to do it and we have to fight to get it done. So hopefully it'll get implemented within a year, but again, that's going to take tremendous focus and a lot of oversight.
What happens if not as many Republicans are in the seats come 2018 and you're still working to get all this implemented and up to speed? Are you concerned at all that your process will be derailed?
I would hope not. Look, I think that, again, more options in getting these wait times down. There should be an equality of desire by both sides of the aisle to be able to get this done. I don't think that we're privatizing the VA, which has been a political thing. So I think we're going to win the majority. I actually think that. But if for some reason that we don't, I think that their rhetoric of privatizing the VA will be downplayed. They won't be saying it anymore. But I think it's important that veteran service organizations, veterans are constantly pressuring to make sure this is implemented, to make sure that there's proper oversight to get it done. But I think there's an equality of desire on both sides to reduce these wait times and take care of our veterans.
Congressman, you're a former Navy SEAL. I'm sure you have a lot of friends that have come home and found a very challenging situation, not just in terms of being able to find a job and fit back into society after some of the horrors that they've seen, but also to get the proper medical care. How much of your personal experience and your friends' personal experience has influenced your willingness to see this change and desire to try and push it through?
Well, it's important that we're taking care of that unbroken line of patriots who have stepped forward always on behalf of this nation. And I have the honor and the privilege of representing the district that has more veterans in active duty than anyone in the nation. I'm in the VA system myself. I have tons of friends who are. It's an issue. These are issues that we deal with every single day in my district. And I know it's a huge responsibility, but it's an honor for me to do so. And on this Memorial Day and Memorial Day weekend, we wish nothing but the best for all of our veterans and their families all around the country.
Yes, well, Representative Taylor, we appreciate it. My dad's a veteran himself, and he relies on that VA care. So I hope you do all you can for all of our veterans out there. And thank you for your service, and happy Memorial Day, sir.
Thank you so much. You as well. God bless.
President Trump wants phase 2 for tax cuts. Now a key Democrat wants to phase them out. So if the cuts go away, could all those market gains go away too? We're going to talk about that. Plus, more teens are having trouble finding a job this summer. Forget about sell in May and go away, right? Stocks surging this month. The major averages all on track for solid gains, led by tech and smaller companies. Some good news there, but will these gains really go away if Democrats get their way? A bill just introduced aimed at repealing the GOP tax cuts. Should investors be worried about it? Let's ask market watchers Melissa Armo, Dan Geltrud, and Gary B. Smith. Great to see y'all. Gary, starting with you. I mean, my goodness, if you get no tax cuts, or if they go away, what happens, to all those people who started spending a little bit more and feeling a little bit more optimistic about their future because they had a few more bucks in their pocket each week?
Exactly, Trish. It's going to be Obama 2.0. We just went through, previous to Trump, 8 years of what I call the economic malaise. There was no incentive out there. Because of all the regulations and the government spending, everything ground to a halt. People weren't optimistic. All that changed when Trump came into office. Not only cutting the regulation, but as we're talking about right here, cutting the taxes. It gave people hope out there, and now optimism's almost at an all-time high. You take those tax cuts back and you say, hey, we're the big government. We'll spend your money as we see fit. We're right back into that malaise again.
See, I think politically speaking, it's not the smartest thing to do, Melissa, only in that, I don't care who you talk to. Most Americans would tell you, they work pretty hard and they like to keep most of what they make.
Yeah, I have no idea why the Democrats are doing this. First of all, the tax law just passed 5 months ago, so it doesn't make any sense to even think about repealing it. But then again, they wanted to impeach Trump the day after he was elected, so I don't understand what they're doing. But the market would not have a positive reaction to any change in this. The market has had a positive reaction since the tax plan was passed, and the market has rallied. We've had a strong rally this year in 2018, and I expect it to continue, hopefully, into 2019.
So, Dan, what does that tell you about 2018? And, if the Democrats are able to claim more seats than the current polls predict, what happens to the market? What happens to taxes?
I think it would be bad business for the Democrats to gain the majority, and the first thing they do is to say, listen, we got to get rid of tax cuts. It's very, very simple. Raising taxes, bad. Tax cuts, good. So I think that It's basic math. Everybody understands. If the Democrats go in a different direction, I think they're going to have a lot of problems.
Yeah. You know, actually, Steve Forbes gave my kids, he met them in the green room, that kind of lesson. And when he left them, he said, so remember, taxes, higher taxes, good or bad? And they were like, bad, Mr. Forbes, definitely bad. But that's the reality, right? I mean, we need this stimulus for the economy. At the same time, though, Gary, I understand when people say they're a little concerned that, you know, we're spending more than we have, and we better get something. We better get some GDP growth out of this plan to lower taxes. And do you think we'll get it?
Well, you know, I hope so, but here's the kind of that straw man fallacy in that argument. It's not the government's responsibility to manage the economy. They're like I think of the government like your condo board. Make the buildings safe, you know, make sure, adjudicate disputes, and then get out of the way. The condo board doesn't say, you know what, you're not earning enough, you should earn more, let's redistribute the income. That's not the job of the government. The job of the government is to build highways, provide for our national defense, be the judicial court, the Supreme Court, and that's it. They keep on taking more and more responsibility, which means, look, we need your money to spend, again, like I said, what we see fit. That's not the government's job. Let the people have their money. The economy is going to go up and down. Stay out of it.
And then, Melissa, don't forget, I mean, what does that do to our competitiveness, right, as a nation? And we got the highest tax rates in the world.
That's right. They wanted this new plan that came out that they're going to try to do something with. I don't know. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer want to do something where they increase now the corporate tax rates. They just decreased them. And think about this. They've already given some of that money and bonuses. What are they going to do if they change it? That would be horrible. The market would have a terrible reaction if they change anything with that. And remember, maybe the tax plan has some tweaking to do. We don't know, but it's not these big things. And remember this, we haven't even gone to full tax season. No one has filed. No individual has filed. No corporation has filed yet. You've got to give it at least a year. Even if something has to be
tweaked, it takes a little time. You know, it's got to work its way through the economy. And as Dan and Steve Forbes say, higher tax is bad, lower tax is good. That's the lesson of the day. Thank you so much. It's great to see you guys. Happy Memorial Day.
Thank you.
All right, you want your teen... summer bummer for teens. According to a recent report from employment firm Challenger Gray & Christmas, teen job growth will stay just about flat this year. Turns out a lot of traditional summer jobs, they're being taken by older Americans, partly because they have better people skills. Is that because our kids are glued to their gadgets? Author of Retire Inspired, Chris Hogan, joins me now. I'm so glad we're doing this story, Chris, because I got 3 little ones, and I mistakenly got them iPads for educational purposes. They needed to do some stuff for school, and I was like, what I found was we actually had to take them away and lock them up and say enough. Forget the education we would have received on that little iPad, because it's not worth the headache of everything else that goes with it. Our iPads, phones, the internet for these young people sort of overtaking their lives.
Trish, I really think it can be. It can really get in the way. But congratulations to you for being a parent, learning to say no.
Yeah, those things lasted like 5 days.
Right? But I'm telling you, I mean, in order for young people to get a work ethic, it has to be something that's taught. So parents really need to step in and engage and help young people to understand. Getting out to find a job, there are jobs out there. There's grass that's growing. There's mulching that needs to be done. There are pets that need to be walked. So whenever I hear that jobs aren't available, I shake my head at this because I know it's not reality. So we're going to have to teach them and guide them to help them to find a job so they can make some money.
Yeah, look, I basically, my mother said, get out on your bike when I was 16 years old as a teenager, and don't come home until you have a job. And so inevitably, I mean, I found some kind of job, right? Some little job, bussing tables or working at the local ice cream or whatever store I could find, because I knew I didn't really have an alternative. I was not going to be welcome in the house without a job. Do parents need to be a little tougher on their kids? I mean, do we have to have higher expectations? And maybe, a page out of my mom's book, don't come home until you got a job, kid?
Well, Trish, I mean, that don't come home till you get a job. That's a little harsh right there, okay? I don't know if I believe that.
But it worked.
But I can believe that she pushed you. And you know what? My parents did the same for me. That's not being a bad parent. That's encouraging and helping people to begin to get life skills. I mean, if you get out in the real world, no one's going to come up and knock on your door and bring you a job. You've got to begin to find it. So I think as parents, if we push them and guide them, they can learn how to persevere. They can learn how to network and do hard work as well as follow up. These can be crucial life skills for later.
But it also means taking away the devices, right? I mean, it's so easy because those devices can be so entertaining and you get a bit of a break as a parent, but you're not helping your kids.
No, you're not. And as you look at it as a parent, I think setting up some parameters on how much time we're going to be on it. Listen, pull away the phone and unplug the Xbox. Let's engage with our young people to help them to be grown adults. Social interaction is a requirement in careers. Yep. There's not a place where you can just hide. So young people that learn how to have those communication skills and to be able to interact with individuals different than themselves, they set themselves up for success.
I got you, Chris. And you know what? Parents need to do the same thing. Unplug. It's Memorial Day. Good time to do that. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Point. Are you a chronic returner on Amazon? If so, you better watch out because you could actually get banned. The online retailer giant reportedly cutting off customers who return too many items, trying to prevent shoppers from abusing the system. So what do we make of all this? Let's ask Fox News contributor Kat Timpf and retail watcher Heatha Herzog. Heatha, you return?
Oh, I return a lot. But here's the issue.
You haven't gotten banned.
I haven't gotten banned. Basically, retailers have a $50 billion problem that is retail fraud. And a lot of this has to do with people buying items and returning. Now, I know none of us do this. We buy items, dresses, what have you product. We sometimes use them. I'm not including myself in this because it's absolutely fraud, but people do this and then return it. And what they are trying to do is prevent that from happening. It really eats into the bottom line of these retailers.
Yeah, Kat, I get it. You know, it's not fair. It's not honest. But do retailers need to be basically sort of siphoning off a portion of their budget, just assuming that this is going to happen?
Right. Well, the problem here is there's some people who are reporting that they only returned, say, 4 or 5 items and they wound up getting banned. And the problem with Amazon is that it doesn't actually state what constitutes abusing the system and returning too many things. So I think that they should be more clear in terms of how many things that you can return before you might be getting in trouble, because I don't know if you're anything like me, I would die without Amazon Prime. It's how I get absolutely everything. I haven't been to a store in a very long time. And I have no desire to go to a store anytime soon. So it would be a tragedy. My heart goes out to anybody who got banned unjustly from this.
But I wonder if it's sort of like, you know, you're right in that they should be more forthcoming perhaps on how they actually do this, because Heatha, like, if you buy something, it's clearly been worn or the tags are off and you try and send it back, I can understand that maybe gets you a few more demerits than, say, if you bought something and sent it back in great condition.
It's part of the problem. I mean, yeah, what they want to do is curb this retail fraud, but at the same time, they don't want to give away what would necessarily prevent them from curbing that retail fraud. So if they have it in the fine print of what it would take to get someone banned, then all of a sudden people will skirt that and think of something else in order for them to commit this type of fraud. You know, it's an interesting thing. It's been going on for many, many years. In fact, Amazon isn't the only retailer that's going to be doing this. You know, there's actually a lot of brick and mortar stores that are doing this already. So,
but, you know, you ought to, as a consumer, right, have the ability to return if they send you something that you don't like. And let's not, you know, kid ourselves. You buy something on Amazon and you think it's pink and it turns out to be red, because they're not always so true to their colors and the pictures, etc. The consumer deserves that right, Kat, to be able to send something back if it's not as promised.
Right, absolutely. Although I personally hate the process of returning so much. It's such a hassle that I've kept so many things that I hate that I just are taking up space in my apartment because I feel bad throwing them away. The only thing that I've actually ever returned from Amazon was a broken candle, because that was a hazard and I didn't want in my apartment.
Right, but that
you have to have that ability
just to return it, right? You got to run it back to the UPS and fill out the forms, and I'm with you. But, you know, not everybody's like that. A lot of people are willing, Heatha, to use something and return it. And Amazon, I guess, is going to have to crack down.
Unfortunately, that is the case, yes.
It's real sad of those people.
Yeah,
Real sad. It is.
They're rooting for everyone else.
Indeed. All right. Well, good to see you guys. Thank you very much. It's nice to have you here on this Memorial Day. That does it for us today on Your World. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Memorial Day. Have a barbecue.